Let's start with a blunt admission. Whenever a topic grows big enough to move markets, rewrite national policies, reshape industries and generate eye-watering profits, it attracts two things: true believers and opportunists. Climate change is no exception. Before we go any further, I want to hold your attention for the next minute, because this entire conversation sits at the crossroads of history, politics, science and money. And if you bail early, you miss the point. Every major historical shift, whether it was the oil boom, the nuclear age or the Industrial Revolution, produced legitimate scientific breakthroughs wrapped in layers of hype, fear, propaganda and financial incentives. The same forces operate today. So instead of accepting slogans from either side, let's peel back the layers and follow what historians have always trusted: evidence, context and economic motive. If you're here for conspiracy candy or blind trust in institutions, this isn't that channel. What we're doing instead is cutting into the machinery behind the messaging and asking who benefits, who pays, and how the narrative, true or twisted, became a global force worth trillions. To understand the scam narrative, you first need to understand the historical roots of climate research. Climate science didn't begin as a modern political football. It started in the 19th century with Fourier, Tyndall and Arrhenius studying atmospheric heat retention long before any government climate agenda existed. Their work wasn't funded by NGOs or political commissions. It was pure early scientific curiosity about why Earth isn't a ball of ice. By the mid-20th century, as industries expanded and atmospheric sampling improved, researchers realized carbon dioxide levels were rising steadily. The controversy wasn't, is carbon dioxide rising, but rather, how much does it matter? And that is still the central scientific debate today. The data are the data. The interpretation is where disagreements thrive. When you're studying this historically, it's important to keep your eyes on the transition from isolated scientific observation to large-scale political instrument. That's really where the incentives start to shift. The modern climate narrative, it gained power when governments realized it could steer policy, markets and public behavior. Back in the 1980s and 90s, the issue moved out of academic circles and into international institutions like the IPCC. Here's where, history buffs should perk up. Whenever a scientific topic enters the realm of treaties, trade rules, subsidies and global conferences, it becomes a geopolitical tool. Countries saw an opportunity. Some saw a threat. Fossil fuel economies feared regulation. Emerging green industries saw a chance to secure permanent revenue streams. And nations vulnerable to climate impacts pushed for adaptation funding. None of this implies the science was fabricated. But, it does show how political structures shape the message. If you want a practical way to analyze any climate claim, pro or anti, start by identifying the actor, then map their economic interests. It's really the same approach historians use to analyze wartime propaganda or Cold War intelligence leaks. Don't begin with belief, begin with motive. The trillions behind the hoax idea usually points to where climate money flows, so let's examine that honestly. Globally, climate-related spending, renewable energy, adaptation projects, carbon markets, subsidies, research grants, does add up to trillions. But calling that entire ecosystem a hoax misses the complexity. Renewable companies absolutely fight for subsidies because it keeps them alive in competitive markets. Oil companies also spend billions shaping climate policy to protect their interests. Governments use climate frameworks to direct investment and strengthen alliances. So the real story isn't a singular global scam. It's multiple competing industries, each pulling the rope in its direction and using the climate narrative as leverage. If you want a practical application, study climate finance the same way you'd study the military-industrial complex. Track who gets the contracts, who receives subsidies, who lobbies for what. Once you see the money trail, you stop being swayed by surface-level talking points. Why the hoax narrative resonates so strongly is itself a historical phenomenon worth understanding. Public trust in institutions has collapsed worldwide. People watch financial crises, failed wars, public health missteps, and corruption scandals unfold in real time. When authorities say trust us, modern citizens, especially survivalist-minded people, don't. Add to that the fact that climate predictions have sometimes been exaggerated, miscommunicated, or weaponized politically, and the door opens for skepticism. This skepticism isn't foolish. It's the rational result of historical patterns. But it becomes dangerous when skepticism transforms into rejecting all data outright. That's why your job as a historian, or simply an informed citizen, is to discipline your skepticism. Compare sources. Separate the physical science from the political spin. Recognize that a topic can be real while still being exploited. A practical way to use this knowledge is to build a personal framework for evaluating future climate claims. Start by identifying the type of claim. Is it scientific, political, economic, or emotional? Next, identify the evidence being cited. Does it rely on measurable data, historical trends, or, just rhetoric? Then examine the incentives of the messenger. A government presenting climate urgency may seek regulatory power. A company downplaying climate risk may seek to maintain profit margins. And a content creator declaring it all a hoax may be monetizing outrage. And finally, compare the claim to independent data sets. Treat it the same way you'd analyze troop reports from the Second World War or archaeological claims with, rather shaky excavation methods. Your goal is to build a filter that shields you from both naive belief and lazy denial. So, is climate change a global scam? The truthful answer is that the phenomenon itself isn't a hoax, but the narratives surrounding it are absolutely manipulated for gain. And honestly, knowing that gives you power. Power to analyze. Power to prepare. Power to understand how large-scale movements grow and how they bend history. If you found this breakdown useful, do subscribe to Strange Planet and share this video so more people can sharpen their historical instincts rather than surrender them to political slogans.